So 2020 polls.
Yeah.
What was the state of the baseline like? Were there a bunch of spots that year? Or?
Yeah. So Mark Anderson, Spencer Mass, Timmy Moriarty, they all aged out the previous year. And then Emily, for life reasons, was not coming back. So
all of a sudden, you're the only vet.
So all of a sudden, I'm the only vet. I'm 18, so I'm still super young and like inexperienced. And I still like, I've got a year of pulse under my belt, but I don't feel like I've proved myself yet.
Yeah.
I still am unsure of where I fit in the activity. I'm still unsure of my ability, of my knowledge. There's so much more things that I want to know and so much more things that I want to learn and want to get better at. So I'm in that state of, okay, well, not that 2019 didn't matter, because it 100% did, and it got me in the door, and I learned so much. But me back then, not having that awareness was like, I still am not, I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm going in and I'm like, oh, like there are some people coming out because of how well Pulse did, and people that had auditioned at Pulse before, and with Joey doing Blue Stars, he's bringing Bronwyn Zeba out. She did Dark Sky and was phenomenal there, and was on 2. Incredible bass drummer. So already I'm like, okay, there's some people coming out.
Yeah.
And then Ricky Garza, who had just done Mandarins
yeah.
on 3, and I knew that he was incredibly good, and he had done POW on 2 the previous year and before 19, and with the Faded Kings show, and I loved the way that bass line played and had a lot of respect for him. So I was like, okay, like I've got like 2 people, and then Nick Cordoni is like, I want to go to Pulse after seeing me there. And I was like, oh crap, and I was like, man, he just did Vanguard.
Yeah.
On 4, I didn't do anything.
Right.
So I am sweating bullets. I am thinking they are going to cut me the entire audition.
Wow.
Literally. Like because I didn't know.
Sure.
I didn't know how that worked. I didn't know what that process was. And I knew that.
And again, still a young person.
Yeah.
You know, and just like
nervous and
right. And you're not looking at it with the eyes you have now.
Exactly.
You're looking at it with
I'm
the
looking
eyes
at it
that
with
you have.
those eyes.
Right.
Yeah. So the nervous, unsure of himself eyes, and so I'm like the entire time, I'm like, I'm gonna get cut. I didn't march. I practiced a lot, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
In my head at the time, which is looking back on, I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's something that I would totally like assuage someone from thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and those people were coming out. So I was like, okay, well, I've got like some steep competition. I'm trying to make 2. It's like the whole thing. Because that's always been the drum that I wanted to play for a whole handful of reasons.
And faced with that, you know, regardless of whether it was reasonable to have that perspective, that was fuel for you, or were you like, did you feel like you had imposter syndrome and you were defeatist about it?
No, it was fuel.
Which way did it work?
It was fuel for sure.
Good.
There was a moment like during some of the visual audition portion where I was starting to fall into a little bit of that. But then I was like, I don't see them, like they would tell me.
Yeah.
And they weren't. And so I was like, okay, well, I think I'm fine. But it was definitely fuel to the point of being like, hey, like I want to be able to show you more. Like, can we do this?
Right.
Can I be on this drum for this? Like blah blah blah. Like going to Joey, and by that point, Johnny Green, who was supposed to give me the spot for Troopers, is now on staff for bass drums because Richie has left.
Yeah. I love Johnny, man. Johnny's such a good dude.
Johnny is
really
incredible, just such a good energy, just so... I feel like whenever he was in front of the bass line, we would just all kind of do this. Like the world would get smaller, and it would just only be about the thing. And I loved that about him. Just because of his energy, because he was so relaxed. And he was a Pulse vet and a Vanguard vet. It was like everything about what I wanted to do. They were super understanding and didn't get weird with me for a second, even though I was being totally weird. The line, they're like, okay, we're giving contracts to all 4 of you. We just don't know what the order is going to be yet. So we know who the line is, essentially. We just don't know the order. By that point, Brandon Adamson is now open because he auditioned at RCC.
I remember that.
And got cut because all of the...
Dude, the RCC 20 line was like, well, it's like,
yeah,
not just RCC, but in general. I was going to say, and I was going to wait and say it, but I'll just say it now. I feel like we had an enormous amount of riches bass drumming wise here in Southern California of 2020. And I remember seeing you guys and then RCC, and it's like, this is like ridiculous. And especially the RCC 20 line is like,
no, they were legend status, incredible.
They did not deserve those System Blue drums.
By the way, though, not just Southern California, the Atlanta Quest bass line that year.
Oh my
yeah.
God, yes.
Insane.
Yeah. No, for real. It was a great year for bass drumming. It just didn't work out with him at RCC for a whole handful of reasons.
Yep.
So, but insane bass drummer. And then we tell him that we're looking for a bottom.
Yep.
And he's unsure because, I mean, he had just done a season on 2 at Vanguard. Incredible person. Nick tells him who the line is, like the people involved. And then he's like, oh, I'll go. Because he knows.
Yeah.
And so he goes. We end up setting the line the next weekend with him on bottom, Ricky, me, Bronwyn, Nick, top 4. And that was the season where I started to feel comfortable in a good and a bad way. From a perspective of I got considerably better over the summer because I practiced a lot. So then it was just a matter of me getting behind a drum again and getting on a floor and marching and playing and that because it had been 3 or 4 months by that point. So since the last time I had done that, which was finals. But by that point, I was able to break a lot of bad habits because I hadn't done it. So my marching had gotten better. I was doing better choreography-wise. I wasn't sticking out as much. There was a lot of things about it where I started feeling better about the way that I was doing things. And the music was great. I loved the music in 20.
Very cool show that year.
We had some great bass moments. I was honestly surprised by what John was having us do because I know him and he typically tends to go on the we'll make it harder later if you guys can do it thing. And I was looking at the sheets and I was like, this is really hard. And all the slow down. And
I was just about to say that because I remember I filmed you guys at the preview show and I was like, oh yeah, like so you're doing like the slowing down and like the stuff that was very where the demand was like, you know, the tempo and everybody doing it at the same rate and
for a bass
line to be able to do that.
Yeah. So we were doing like all the metric mods. It's like this tempo becomes this tempo because we're playing this rhythm and all these things. And that was nothing I'd ever done, but I'd always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at the page. And I'm like, man, this is so cool. But I got a little comfortable, I feel like, in terms of the drive to learn new things and push myself, not from like an outward perspective, because for so long that had been done for me of like, I made a group and then I've always had people on me because I was the youngest and I was the least consistent and the least experienced. So that naturally happened. Yeah. But then in 2020, I started catching up. So I wasn't getting that as much. And John started trusting me more with things. So like I wasn't getting as much from him and that trickles down. So we're doing great and we're having a phenomenal competitive season. We're going undefeated. We're loving it. We love the show, the music, the visual design, everything about it. It's a bit more minimalistic than it was the previous year. There's a whole lot of things where I'm like, man, this is really cool. I love the uniforms. The front ensemble was ridiculous because we had like 4-year vets or 5-year vets. It was wild. It was insane.
think that 2020 season, it was definitely, it was going to be a fight and it was shaping up to be like this fantastic ending at WGI. And then,
but meanwhile, before we talk about that,
before we get
Vanguard,
into that.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So by that point, so Pulse comes around. I'm now marching with Nick and Brandon. I had marched with Nick at Marin Cadets. He was base 2 at Marin Cadets. I was 4. So I knew him well. I'm getting to know Brandon, someone that I looked up to for so long, and worshipped. I just couldn't. I was like, what do you do? Like, who is this person? And he ends up being such a weirdo. Yeah. And just like totally go with the flow and taught me a lot as a result of that. But yeah, so I'm talking to them about it and they're both like, we like 100% think that you're going to do it, sort of thing. And then it was a question of like, well, what drum? And they were looking for a bottom because Jacob Wilson at the time Was not doing it for an internship, I believe.
I thought he aged out.
No, his age out was 21.
Really? Wow.
He was just out of high school when he made it in 17.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was super young too.
Yeah.
He was like around my age.
Great bottom bass drummer.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Freaking phenomenal. So there was like, they're looking for someone to fill that. You know what I mean? They're looking for someone. They're looking for someone who can play bottom. They're looking for someone who's big enough to carry it and not die, because Vanguard uses a 32-inch Dynasty, which on the Dynasty drums is not only 32 inches, but it's also 4 inches deeper. So it's wider. So it's even heavier. So you need someone that's physically big enough to carry that. And I checked all the boxes, essentially. And I make it to that audition. I haven't played bottom since my sophomore year in high school when I wasn't doing anything.
Head's all wobbly.
Yeah. And I get there and I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, but I'm totally okay with that because I just want to be here.
Yeah.
I just want to be here. And I remember like playing bottom.
And you had wanted to be there for so long.
Oh, for so long. And now it's like I had a way. So they do the classic bass drum thing. Like they move us around a lot the first night. And then I'm told to look at the 5 parts, which is what I was expecting. So I'm doing that. And it is so hard to play that drum. I mean, there's that combination. I don't think people like, and you wouldn't know because Vanguard is, I mean, it's so niche. It's like such a small, specific group of people that march there. But those drums are the hardest drums I've ever had to play on, just in terms of their response and trying to get the correct sound and how finicky they are. I mean, you look the wrong way at those drums and they don't sound right. And they don't have rebound. And there was so much about, and it was 5, and it was the 32, and it was tuned, like all the things where I'm just like, man, this is something that I've never done before. But I loved it because I was like, I just get to play loud. Like, this is cool. And it was Paul Book, and that year, the opener is almost exactly the same as what our opener was for this past year.
Okay.
So a lot of the beats were the same. So I'm playing a lot of what I ended up playing on too.
Yeah, like how much did you end up having to learn? How far along did it get before?
Well, we made it through February camp. But we weren't at February camp because of Pulse. There was a competition that weekend. So we missed February camp. We were at January, which was call access. When we set the line, we learned the opener, the full opener. And like so much fun. So that was the extent of my experience up until that point. Playing with Vanguard was being the bottom, learning the 2020 opener, which ended up being the 22 opener. Yep. And it being really hard, and I'm like, man, this summer is going to be so difficult, but I just want to be there.
Little did you know.
Little did I know.
Yeah.
Little did any of us know.
Yeah. The rug getting pulled out from under you. Yeah.
Exactly.
So from your perspective, because everybody knows, what happened that season and stuff like that. How did you, just very quickly, how did you make sense of that? And like, how did you handle that? Because more than a lot of us, you had a lot taken away from you that year. You know, not being able to march a full indoor season, and also having the summer taken away from you after making literally the season you make the group that you've been wanting to make forever. Can you remember what sort of went through your head?
Oh, I mean, I was devastated.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us were. I was in shambles. It was really, I just couldn't accept it.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like that had been one of my main life goals for 4 years up until that point. Yeah. So I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I was really upset about Pulse. I was very, very upset about Vanguard. And then the uncertainty of like
the open-endedness of like, how long is this going to last?
Yeah, exactly. Like, am I ever going to be able to do this again?
Right. Because these are your prime years.
Exactly.
So
that ends up turning into 2 summers gone and indoor gone. So what would have been this is funny because I sound like I'm whining, but what would have been 5 years with Pulse? It was 4.
But that's true.
Yeah.
But and even more importantly, like we said off camera, what could have been 3 years
with Vanguard
ended up only being 1.
1.
So I mean, we feel that.
Yeah.
You know, like there's I mean, you ended up, you know, I'm sure, I mean, hopefully like when you look back on it, you end up thinking, you're happy with the experience and all of that stuff, but we all know that it's a shame, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a shame for everyone. I mean,
like literally for the entire world, that time was a massive tragedy, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm just stuck at home like everyone else, still playing drums. That was a very big, like practicing and learning things was a very big outlet for me. And I kept myself to it very, very, very heavily because I needed something to keep me sane after losing all of that. And then secondarily of like, also my life is not moving. Yeah. We're all indoors. We're all stuck. So I would be practicing for like 3 or 4 hours a day at least. And then there were times where I would go well into the night and like practice from like 6 p.m. to like 4 in the morning and just, and just trying to get all of that energy out, trying to get all of that emotion. Right. And like the frustration and the anger and the sadness surrounding all of that. Because that is really hard. And it still is. It's hard to talk about right now.
Yeah. I mean, and I remember, I mean, we don't have to, spend a whole lot of time on it, but that's part of the reason why we put together the marching vlogs Drumline. Like when Sergio came up with that idea,
that's what I was about to get to.
One of the sort of like main intentions behind that was to get back something that we had all lost. Yeah. You know, and that everybody really, really needed. Yep. You know?
And I remember when I got the call from Sergio, because he had messaged me, he was like, hey, I want to talk to you about a potential like performance opportunity. And I was like, what does that even mean? Yeah. Like, what could you possibly mean right now? Right. And he calls me and he explains the whole thing. He's like, you're one of like 2 people that I've talked to. I just want to see if you would even be interested in doing it, if you think other people would be interested in doing it. And I was like, are you crazy? Of course. Yeah. I will do literally anything you want me to do to be a part of this. Yeah. Because I just wanted to drum so bad. And then that ended up being so cool. Yeah. Like the mix.
Like it was so weird how, so for people who don't know, it was a you know, essentially like in the middle of COVID, we put together this group and thank goodness Sergio's head works like that, where he's always trying to think of these kinds of things. But then we brought Glenn Crosby aboard, PC got involved, ended up giving us a rehearsal space, ended us, allowing
drums,
us to use their equipment, and also ended up facilitating a way that group could give back to the community, all to facilitate being able to get together, and drum, right? But then also this weird thing of like, what would happen if we took RCC Pulse and Broken City people and just put them all together in the same group? Like, what would happen? And what an amazing experience. I mean, from my perspective, I got a lot out of that experience. And I'm sure, hopefully you did as well.
100%. And I feel so grateful and so like lucky that I got that call and that Serge was so honest and so open to me being a part of that. And because that baseline was so much fun to play with, because it was a bunch of people that I would have never had the opportunity to have played with ever, because of how different our directions were. And like same for them, because it was Mako and then Aaron Human.
Yeah.
And
Gilbert.
And then Gilbert and then me and then Adrian.
Yeah.
Like a whole handful of people.
The all-star baseline.
It was so much fun. And all 4 of them, I mean, that was my first time really getting to interact with them in a serious way.
Yeah, that was the best stuff. Like like that one day when we all got tacos afterwards in the park, and everybody was just like hanging out and talking, and obviously everybody's homies, everybody's friends. Yeah. Everybody's in the community, but actually getting to be around each other and do the thing together. Yeah, I thought was like a really amazing byproduct of that whole thing.
And that was a hard. I feel like I was somewhere in the middle between these 2 big waves of people getting into the activity and marching these big groups, because there was their generation, and then I was kind of stuck. Me and Frankie kind of in like this weird. And then this past year, like 22, 23, this massive influx of new people into these groups. Right. So I struggled identifying with either of them a lot, honestly. And I didn't feel like I could really talk to a lot of those guys during the marching vlogs thing until it concluded, because I actually had that experience. Because when I started marching was when they were all 21 and I was 17. Like, why are they going to want to talk to me? And that's understandable 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't hold that against them at all. But at the time, I didn't feel like I really could.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was this weird.
But it's interesting that you say that, Jacob, because like this whole like long journey for you as a performer in this activity has also been an emotional journey, maturity journey, right? With how you interact with people, you know, and what you feel like on the inside, you know, and how that translates to interacting with people on the outside.
Yeah.
You know, and again, that's what that part of your life is about. It's about figuring out all of those things.
That's why I'm so grateful for the activity and like as a whole.
Yeah.
So we make it through the blip, as for lack for a better words, the pandemic.
Was the next thing that happened the Vanguard?
Oh, there was like
we had the video, the 21 video. So we did that. That was cool. It was 4 days.
Right.
So Paul sent us the music in advance, which is the first time he'd ever done that, and the last time we'll probably ever do that. He sends us all the music and an MP3. So I practiced with that. We show up on a Tuesday. I think it was like Wednesday we start rehearsing. It was Wednesday we started rehearsing. Thursday we rehearsed more. Friday we recorded Friday we recorded the audio. Saturday we recorded the video. Sunday, age out ceremony. Leave. So that was our season. That was our 21.
Wow.
Was this in Texas?
Yes. Yeah. So this was all the percussion stuff happened at UNT. So all the audio that you hear was recorded at Apogee Stadium. Which is why it sounds so good, like natural reverb, that whole thing. On the UNT drums. I played bottom for that. Since that was like essentially that was the 2020 line, like the to be 2020 line, outside of one of the snare drummers, Callum, who I marched with American Cadets. He's from the UK. He couldn't make it, obviously, for obvious reasons. So Eliana Yamuni ended up filling in his spot because her age out was technically 22, but she decided not to march. I actually don't know why. But so she got involved, which was great. And then the quad line was an amalgamation of a bunch of people from a bunch of years. It was supposed to be 6 people. It ended up only being 5. Yeah. But a bunch of intense quad legends from Paul Rennick years.
Did any of those, did anybody, like any of those tenor guys ended up doing troopers? Because remember the shortened...
Yeah.
Well...
21 summer.
No. So none of the 20 Vanguard guys ended up going to troopers for 21.
Okay. But some of the 21 troopers ended up becoming 22 Vanguard. Got it. Yeah.
That was the connection. Yeah.
Okay, got
it. So we did that. Honestly, cool video. You don't see the bass drums very much, but besides that, it was a cool video. It sounded great. And then we get into 22.
Yeah.
And then so you come back 22.
Yeah.
Are you ready for Pulse? You're like, okay, I'm ready to get back into this?
Well, by that point, we didn't know. Because it wasn't until...
It was still a little bit...
It wasn't until like literally like maybe 2 weeks before we had auditions that they were even saying, oh, Pulse is an organization that has money and things that we can do. Because they weren't trying to guarantee us anything for obvious reasons. Yeah. They were just trying to get the thing back up and running. And then it wasn't until a week and a half before or a week before where they posted auditions. So I was rooting for it so heavily. And I was like, please, we got to figure this out. Yeah. And then we did. And thank God. And auditions rolls around and I have no clue what the bass line's going to be. Brandon is all in. Me and him just moved in together. By that point. He moved down from NorCal because he was going to Kelsey Fullerton. He transferred there. So we're living together. We're both doing the bass line. We're like, who the hell is going to do this? Yeah. It ended up being, we do the first weekend. Daniel Arezzi hits me up. And he's like, hey, I made a mistake. I really want to march. Because he wasn't at the audition. And I had talked to him before and told him, we're looking for a bottom specifically. I think you'd be good at that. And he was like, I'm down. I just don't think life is going to be a thing. And he sees all the posts and all that stuff. And he's like, nope, like I got to do this. Yeah. So he puts a lot of things on hold to come out and audition. He auditioned, he makes it. Frankie had auditioned for Broken City, but that was the year that Chap and CJ had come out for Broken City. So they already were having problems with like vets.
Yeah.
Because Chap and CJ are absolute.
Yep. They're
mean,
beasts.
They're powerhouses. So how are you going to cut any of the 4 vets that you had from Broken City or Chap or CJ?
Exactly.
So they were already having conversations like, well, we'll take 6. We're not taking 7. Frankie, unfortunately,
I did not know that about Frankie. I didn't know that she went to Broken City auditions.
She had gone to Broken City. I found out that Chap and CJ were marching, and I was like, hey, so you know, Chap and CJ are coming out. I'm not sure if you know that. If things get weird, let me know, because we're looking for people, and it'd be cool to march with you again. Because me and her had marched together at Odyssey. It was how we met. She was on 2, and I was on 3 at that time. She was a senior high school. I was a junior. So really close, really similar experiences. Funny thing about Frankie too, her only actual audition ever was for Vanguard. Every other place that she auditioned, she either had gotten because she was a vet,
somebody hit her up,
or
like she was available,
or someone had hit her up, or she was filling a spot.
Yeah.
The only actual audition she went to was Vanguard, and she freaking crushed it. But yeah, so I text her that. She gets cut from Broken City. She hits me up. She comes out, makes it. One of my old students, Taylor Houston, ends up making the bass line on top, but she ends up not being able to do it because of family things. So she's gone. She's like out of the state. She has to leave the state.
She was Chino Hills High School, correct?
Yeah. She was bass 2 in 20. And so then we're like, okay, now we got to figure out.
Let's talk for a second, really quick.
Yeah.
When did you get asked to help out at Chino Hills?
That was me asking because I was so desperate to get experience and wanting to be a part of the program. So I filled in for one day in 2019, my senior year, for Timmy. When they really needed someone, he was like, I mean, if you want. Because he said it jokingly, and I was like, wait, really? He was like, actually, I mean, it kind of makes sense. So I did that. And then I was pestering him, just like, can you talk to John? Can you talk to John? I really want to be involved, blah, 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 blah. And Timmy was super nice. He talks to John. John asks me what I'm doing, asks me where I'm going to be living, that sort of thing. I tell him Fullerton. He's like, oh, that's actually helpful. I tell him I'm going like music ed. He's like, okay, well, that actually makes sense. So he lets me be involved. So I started teaching the summer after I graduated. So the summer that I wasn't doing, that's another like sort of big blessing in disguise, was me not marching troopers allowed me to teach Chino Hills.
Oh, okay.
For the full summer. Because Timmy had work and things that he couldn't do during the day. So there were a lot of times where it ended up just being me and Jeremy Riley in front of the Chino Hills Battery. And that was it, because Zach was doing things. Eli wasn't involved at that time. John had stuff that he was doing. So there were so many days where it would be just me and Jeremy.
That's not a small deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, getting that perspective as a teacher, getting thrown into teaching high school at that level. Yeah.
It was incredibly helpful. It was incredibly helpful. And then the second big thing with that program for me was when Zach was doing the 21 summer with Bluecoats. Yeah. They didn't have anyone. So I was the full battery guy for their full band camp, for their full summer. I did everything. And I did that for GAR as well.
Wow.
So I did their full band camp. I did Chino Hills full band camp. And then I was the quad tech for Chino Hills for the 21 fall.
When you look at all of that, any big revelations, seeing it from that side?
Taps are important. honestly, as a bass drummer,
taps are not unimportant.
Well, because as a bass drummer, so much of what we play, it's like, well, you as a single person, you need to balance to the full ensemble melodically, because they need to be able to hear what the bass drums are doing. Yeah. And you're a single instrument against 9 snares and 5 quads and 5 marimbas and the whole bag. Yeah. So I was not used to playing that way. And it was always so funny, because they would always give me so much crap about like, oh, you play like a bass drummer, blah, 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 but like all these things. And it wasn't until I had to teach it that then like logically it just started clicking. Yeah. And I was like, oh, you need to play that lower. Oh, you need to play that lower. Like all that, like so many things about why they do things like upper battery started making sense. Right. So many things that I would hear, and I was like, I mean, I get it, but I didn't get it until that moment. And that was really difficult. That summer was really, I got almost burnt out pretty fast, because I did so much time. And it was cool getting to work with John because the big thing was Jeremy Riley was no longer in the program. He was no longer, that was why they needed someone. It was like Zach was gone and Jeremy was gone. So it was like, holy crap, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And I was available. So I did it. Incredible experience. I'm very, very grateful to John for letting me do that. Because man, like I learned so much. I learned so much that summer.